6 months after first contact, Luna Bright stood on the observation deck of the Zephyrian Embassy Station, wearing ceremonial robes that had been crafted by alien artisans from materials found nowhere else in the galaxy. The robes were beautiful, but felt strange against her skin, a constant reminder of the role she had never asked for but had learned to accept. Divine Luna, Commander Vex 9 approached with the graceful gliding motion of his people. The delegation from the Keeper Worlds has arrived. They wish to learn from your wisdom about protecting the sacred creatures of their realm. Luna nodded, trying to project the calm authority that the aliens expected from their nature goddess. Over the past months, she had learned to speak in ways that maintained the illusion while still being truthful about wildlife conservation principles. I will share what knowledge I can, Luna replied, using the formal tone that the Zephyrians associated with divine speech. The protection of all living creatures is a sacred duty that extends beyond the boundaries of worlds. The Keeper Worlds delegation consisted of another herbivorous species that had heard about humanity's supposed divine powers through Zephyrian religious broadcasts. They were tall, plant-like beings who grew flowers from their heads and communicated through color changes in their petals. Blessed controller of earth beasts, their leader said through translation devices, our worlds face a crisis. Creatures we do not understand have appeared in our forests, and we fear to approach them. Luna reviewed the holographic images they provided, recognizing what appeared to be creatures similar to Earth's large herbivores, animals that looked like giant deer, massive ground birds, and something resembling elephants, but covered in colorful fur. These beings are not to be feared, Luna said carefully. They are plant-eaters like yourselves, seeking only food and safety for their families. Observe them from a respectful distance, provide them with space to live, and they will bring balance to your forests. The Keeper delegation was amazed by this wisdom. To them, any creature larger than a house cat was potentially dangerous, even herbivores. The idea that these massive beings could be beneficial rather than threatening was revolutionary. Meanwhile, Jake Peterson was conducting what the aliens called divine underwater ceremonies in Earth's oceans. The Zephyrians had provided him with technology that allowed him to film marine life with unprecedented clarity, believing they were helping their sea god document his underwater kingdom. The whale song carries messages across vast distances, Jake explained to a mixed group of alien observers and human marine biologists. These gentle giants communicate with their families across entire ocean basins. Jake's demonstration of whale behavior had convinced several aquatic alien species that humans possessed the power to commune with the largest creatures in the universe. When a pod of humpback whales approached his research vessel, singing their complex songs, the aliens interpreted it as the whales reporting to their divine commander. Amy Foster had perhaps adapted most successfully to her accidental divine role. She had established what the aliens called the Golden Temple of Conservation, actually a wildlife research facility that used Zephyrian technology to monitor and protect endangered species across multiple star systems. The great cats teach us about patience and precision, Amy explained to a group of young Zephyrian scientists who had come to learn from the divine Amy. Each movement has purpose, each decision affects the survival of the pride. Amy had discovered that she could maintain the divine illusion while actually accomplishing real conservation work. The Zephyrians provided resources that allowed her to establish protected areas, monitor wildlife populations, and even relocate endangered species to safe habitats on other worlds. Dr. Helen Cross, had become the unofficial coordinator of humanity's accidental ascension to godhood. She worked behind the scenes to ensure that the documentary makers could fulfill their roles without compromising scientific integrity or accidentally revealing the truth. The key, Helen explained to a secret meeting of Earth's leadership, is that we never actually claim to have supernatural powers. We simply work within their interpretation of our abilities. The system worked because humans naturally behaved in ways that reinforced Zephyrian beliefs. When conservationists spoke passionately about protecting endangered species, the aliens heard divine commitment to their sacred responsibilities. When researchers showed detailed knowledge of animal behavior, it was interpreted as godlike understanding of creation itself. Tony Blake had become something of a legend among the aliens after his bear demonstration. He now led what the Zephyrians called terrestrial beast communion ceremonies, which were actually guided wildlife observation tours for alien visitors to Earth. Remember, Tony would tell groups of nervous alien tourists, the bears are not our servants. We are guests in their home, and we must show proper respect. The aliens found this humility deeply moving, interpreting it as proof that humans were truly wise and benevolent gods who honored all forms of life. The arrangement had unexpected benefits for both species. Earth gained access to advanced alien technology that revolutionized environmental monitoring and conservation efforts. Entire ecosystems could now be protected using Zephyrian force fields and climate control systems. Endangered species were relocated to specially prepared habitats on worlds throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians and their allied species gained something they valued even more: the guidance of beings they believed were divine protectors of the natural world. Their own conservation efforts became more sophisticated as they learned from human expertise, even though they continued to believe that expertise came from supernatural sources. 3 more alien civilizations had joined what they called the Divine Nature Alliance, all of them peaceful herbivorous species that had been inspired by humanity's supposed mastery over predators. Earth became the center of an interstellar nature-preserved network, with humans serving as the revered guardians of life throughout the galaxy. Luna often wondered about the ethics of their situation during quiet moments alone. They were maintaining a beneficial deception, but it was still a deception. However, when she saw the results of their work, species saved from extinction, ecosystems restored, and peaceful cooperation between worlds, she found it easier to accept her unlikely role. "Dr. Cross," Luna said during one of their regular planning meetings, "do you think we'll ever be able to tell them the truth?" Helen considered the question carefully. Maybe someday their understanding of the universe will expand enough to accept the reality of how humans actually interact with wildlife. But until then, we're doing more good in this role than we ever could have done as simple documentary makers. Jake nodded in agreement. "Every time I demonstrate divine communication with marine life, I'm actually teaching alien scientists about conservation biology. The method may be unusual, but the results are real." Amy was reviewing reports from the latest wildlife preservation project. "We've just successfully relocated a species of crystal birds to 3 different worlds where they can safely rebuild their populations. 6 months ago, they were facing extinction. Now they have a chance to thrive across multiple star systems." The irony was not lost on any of them. By accidentally becoming gods in the eyes of peaceful aliens, these wildlife documentary makers had gained the power to protect nature on a scale that no human had ever imagined possible. As Luna prepared for her next divine broadcast, Actually, a wildlife documentary about wolf pack dynamics that would be analyzed as religious scripture by billions of alien believers. She reflected on how far they had all come from their simple goal of educating people about wildlife. Today, we observe the complex social structure of the wolf family. Luna began her recording, unaware that her words would soon be translated into dozens of alien languages and studied as divine wisdom across the galaxy. These magnificent hunters work together to survive in some of the world's most challenging environments. She smiled slightly as she continued, knowing that somewhere in space, peaceful aliens were learning valuable lessons about cooperation and family bonds from creatures they would never dare approach themselves. The universe had given humanity an unexpected role as accidental gods of nature conservation, and they had chosen to use that divine accident to create something genuinely miraculous. A galaxy where all species could live under the protection of beings who truly understood the sacred duty of preserving life. Dr. Helen Cross arrived at the secure government facility 3 days after first contact, carrying her bags and a head full of questions. As one of the world's leading experts in cultural anthropology and interspecies communication, she had been called in to help resolve what officials were calling the documentary deity crisis. Agent Morris, Helen said as she was escorted through multiple security checkpoints, I've read the preliminary reports, but I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. Agent Morris led her to a conference room where Luna, Jake, and Amy sat looking exhausted and overwhelmed. Crown jewels from an alien empire were scattered across the table, along with translation devices and recordings of Zephyrian communications. Dr. Cross, Luna said, standing up wearily, please tell me you have some idea how to fix this situation. I went to film school to make educational documentaries, not to become an alien goddess. Helen studied the Zephyrian recordings for several hours, paying close attention to their cultural analysis of human behavior. What she discovered made her both fascinated and deeply concerned. I see the problem, Helen announced after reviewing the materials. The Zephyrians have made a fundamental error in interpreting your documentaries. They're viewing them through the lens of their own evolutionary history. She pulled up a detailed analysis on the main screen. Look at their homeworld's ecosystem. The largest predator is about the size of a rabbit. They evolved as prey animals, which means their entire psychological framework is built around avoiding danger. When they see humans calmly standing near apex predators, their minds literally cannot process it as anything other than supernatural. Control. Jake leaned forward in his chair. So when I film great white sharks, they see it as me commanding sea monsters? Exactly, Helen replied. And it gets worse. Their society is built on absolute pacifism. Even stepping on grass is considered violence in their culture. To them, any being that can coexist with predators must possess divine power. Amy shook her head in frustration. We tried to explain that we don't actually control these animals. They wouldn't listen. That's because explaining it only reinforces their beliefs, Helen said. In their minds, only truly divine beings would be humble enough to deny their own powers. Agent Morris had been listening carefully to the discussion. Dr. Cross, we need a solution. The Zephyrians have established a permanent embassy, and 3 more alien species have picked up their transmissions. This situation is spreading across the galaxy. Helen's expression grew serious. Before we try to fix this, we need to understand just how deep the misunderstanding goes. I want to observe a direct interaction between our people and the Zephyrians. The opportunity came the next day when Park Ranger Tony Blake volunteered to demonstrate that humans had no special power over wildlife. Tony worked at Yellowstone National Park and had 20 years of experience safely observing bears in their natural habitat. "I'll show them how we actually work with wildlife," Tony said confidently. "When they see that bears don't obey my commands, they'll understand we're just regular people." The demonstration was arranged at a secure location where a family of black bears had been relocated for research purposes. The Zephyrian delegation, led by Dr. Keth Seven, watched from what they considered a safe distance of several hundred yards. Tony approached the bear enclosure with his usual calm professionalism, carrying standard safety equipment and following established protocols. The bears, accustomed to human presence through the research program, showed their typical behavior: cautious awareness followed by general indifference. "Watch this," Tony said into his radio as he moved within 50 feet of the bears. "I'm going to demonstrate normal bear behavior observation." When the largest bear looked at Tony and then simply returned to foraging for food, the Zephyrians were amazed. When Tony moved closer and the bear moved away to maintain distance, they were convinced they were witnessing divine mercy. The death. Creature recognizes the human's authority and shows submission, Dr. Keth Seven reported to his team. The god Tony demonstrates restraint by not commanding the beast to approach. Tony tried a different approach, making noise to show that bears would normally avoid humans. But when the bears moved away from the sound, the aliens interpreted this as proof that Tony was telepathically commanding them to retreat. "This is incredible," Dr. Keth Seven continued. "The god controls the creatures through thought alone. No words, no gestures, just pure divine will." Helen watched the demonstration with growing dismay. Every attempt to show normal human-animal interaction was being misinterpreted as evidence of supernatural control. Dr. Ben Parker, a marine biologist colleague of Jake's, tried a different approach. He brought detailed scientific equipment and attempted to explain how humans study sharks using technology rather than divine power. "These devices allow us to observe shark behavior safely," Ben explained to the Zephyrian delegation. "We use protective cages, electronic monitoring, and careful timing to avoid dangerous encounters." But when Ben showed footage of humans swimming with dolphins, the aliens became even more convinced of human divinity. The dolphins' natural playfulness and curiosity around humans was interpreted as absolute submission to divine authority. "Observe how the gentle water spirits serve the god. Ben," Dr. Keth Seven explained to his assistants, "they perform for his pleasure and follow his movements through the water. Even the peaceful creatures recognize human divinity." Ben tried to explain that dolphins were intelligent and friendly, not servants or slaves. This only made the situation worse. "The god Ben shows wisdom by calling his divine servants intelligent," the aliens concluded. "He honors their service by praising their abilities." Helen realized that the cultural gap was too wide to bridge through simple demonstrations. The Zephyrians' evolutionary background made it impossible for them to understand how humans could survive near predators without supernatural protection. "We need to accept that we cannot convince them otherwise," Helen told the emergency council meeting that evening. "Their entire worldview is based on avoiding predators. They literally cannot conceive of coexisting with dangerous animals through natural means." Luna looked exhausted as she held her alien crown in her hands. "So what do we do? We can't keep pretending to be gods forever." "Actually," Helen said slowly, "maybe we can, and maybe we should. The room fell silent as Helen continued her explanation. Think about what we've learned about the Zephyrians. They're peaceful, they respect what they believe to be divine authority, and they're offering us technology and resources beyond our wildest dreams. If we handle this carefully, we could create a beneficial relationship for both species. Jake was skeptical. You're suggesting we maintain the deception? That seems dishonest. I'm suggesting we adapt to the situation, Helen replied. We don't have to lie about our abilities. We just need to work within their cultural framework. They want to believe we're divine protectors of wildlife. Maybe we can become exactly that. Amy was beginning to understand Helen's reasoning. If they see us as gods of nature conservation, we could actually use that to help protect endangered species on Earth and beyond. Agent Morris was taking notes furiously. Dr. Cross, are you proposing that we establish humanity as a religious authority for an alien species? I'm proposing that we accept the role they've already assigned to us, Helen said. The Zephyrians believe we're divine guardians of the natural world. Instead of fighting that belief, we could use it to create the most effective conservation program in galactic history. The implications were staggering. If humanity could maintain its accidentally acquired divine status, they would have access to alien technology, protection from other species, and the resources to preserve wildlife on a scale never before possible. But it would also mean that a small group of documentary filmmakers would have to live up to the impossible expectations of beings who saw them as gods. Dr. Lisa Grant was having her morning coffee at the NASA Deep Space Communication Array when the computers started going crazy. The signals coming in were unlike anything in their database, clearly artificial, but following no known pattern or language structure. Director Morrison, you need to see this, Lisa called to her supervisor. We're receiving what appears to be a coordinated transmission from outside our solar system. Director Paul Morrison hurried over to Lisa's workstation, his face showing the excitement that all SETI researchers dream of experiencing. Are you certain it's artificial? Absolutely, Lisa replied, pointing to the wave patterns on her screen. The mathematical precision is too perfect for natural phenomena. And look at this pattern here. It repeats every 37 seconds like some kind of greeting or identification signal. What Lisa and Paul could not understand was that the signal was indeed a greeting, but not the kind they expected. The Zephyrian tribute fleet had entered Earth's solar system and was broadcasting religious hymns while announcing their peaceful intentions to what they believed were gods of war. Divine controllers of the death realm, came the translation that Lisa's computer eventually produced. We, the humble children of Zephyr Prime, approach your sacred domain with offerings of devotion and prayers for mercy. Lisa stared at the translation in confusion. Death realm? What could they possibly mean by that? The messages continued for hours, becoming more specific and more puzzling. The aliens seemed to be requesting an audience with individuals they called Divine Luna, of the Bear Command, Sacred Jake of the Void Swimmers, and Holy Amy of the Golden Destroyers. Paul, Lisa said slowly, I think they're talking about our wildlife documentary makers. Director Morrison looked at the names again. Luna could be Dr. Luna Bright from Colorado. Jake might be Jake Peterson, the marine biologist. But why would aliens want to meet with documentary filmmakers? Within hours, the discovery had reached the highest levels of government. Agent Carl Morris of the newly formed Extraterrestrial Contact Division found himself on a secure video call with the president, trying to explain a situation that nobody fully understood. Let me get this straight, the president said, leaning forward in his chair. Aliens have arrived in our solar system and they want to worship our nature documentary people as gods? That appears to be the situation, sir, Agent Morris replied. The linguistics team believes the aliens interpret our wildlife documentaries as religious broadcasts, demonstrating divine power over dangerous creatures. Meanwhile, Luna Bright was in her office at the Colorado Wildlife Research Center, completely unaware that her grizzly bear documentary had triggered an interstellar incident. She was reviewing footage from her latest project when Agent Morris's team arrived. "Dr. Bright," Agent Morris said after showing his credentials, "I need you to come with us immediately. It's a matter of national security involving your wildlife documentaries." Luna stared at him in disbelief. "My documentaries? What could possibly be a security issue about bears and wolves?" The explanation came during a hurried flight to a secure government facility where Luna met Jake Peterson and Amy Foster for the first time. All three documentary makers sat in stunned silence as Agent Morris showed them the alien transmissions. "They think we control these animals?" Amy asked, watching footage of herself standing near the lion pride. "But I was just observing them from a safe distance." Jake shook his head in amazement. "When I film sharks, I use protective equipment and follow strict safety protocols. I never get closer than absolutely necessary." "The aliens don't understand that," Agent Morris explained. "To them, any creature that doesn't immediately attack you must be under your control. Their species evolved as peaceful herbivores. They can't comprehend how we coexist with predators without divine intervention." The Zephyrian fleet took position near Mars, sending increasingly reverent messages toward Earth. Their ships were magnificent crystal structures that looked more like floating temples than military vessels. Each ship carried tribute meant to honor the gods they had discovered. "Divine ones," the latest transmission read, "we have brought offerings from across our empire, rare metals from the forge worlds, crystallized light from our meditation temples, and songs of peace from our greatest artists. We seek only your blessing for our continued existence." Luna felt overwhelmed by the responsibility suddenly placed on her shoulders. "What are we supposed to do? We can't actually control wild animals." "That's exactly the problem," Agent Morris replied. "If we tell them the truth, they might think we're lying about our divine nature. If we try to demonstrate that we don't have powers, it might backfire." Jake was studying the alien ship designs on the monitor. "Look at their technology. Those ships must be incredibly advanced, but they're designed like works of art rather than weapons. These beings really are peaceful." Amy was thinking about the implications. If they believe we're gods and they're peaceful, maybe we can use this situation to help both our species. The first face-to-face meeting was arranged on a neutral space station that the Zephyrians constructed at the edge of Earth's atmosphere. The structure was beautiful beyond description, made of the same crystal materials as their ships, and filled with soft, calming light. Luna, Jake, and Amy were fitted with translation devices and briefed on basic Zephyrian culture. They learned that the aliens communicated through musical tones, showed respect by dimming their natural luminescence, and considered any form of violence to be the ultimate sin. When the shuttle docked with the Zephyrian station, Commander Vex 9 and his diplomatic team were waiting with elaborate ceremony. The aliens were about 7 feet tall, with bodies that looked like living crystal formations. They moved with fluid grace and spoke in harmonious tones that the translation devices converted to speech. "Divine Luna of the Bear Command," Vex 9 said, approaching Luna while his body dimmed to show respect. We are honored beyond measure to stand in your presence. Luna tried to respond normally, but before she could speak, Vex 9 placed an elaborate crown made of rare gems on her head. The crown was beautiful, but extremely heavy, and Luna nearly stumbled under its weight. Great commander of death beasts, Vex 9 continued, we offer this crown as tribute to your divine authority over the savage creatures of your realm. Jake and Amy received similar treatment, with the aliens giving them ceremonial robes and speaking to them in tones of absolute reverence. When Amy tried to explain that she was just a scientist, the aliens interpreted her modesty as divine humility. Blessed Amy, said Dr. Keth 7, your wisdom in understating your powers shows the true nature of godhood. Only the most divine beings speak with such humble grace. The situation became more complicated when the aliens asked for demonstrations of their divine abilities. Luna tried to explain that she couldn't actually command bears, but the aliens had prepared for this response. We understand, Divine Luna, Vex 9 said. Surely your powers are too great to waste on simple demonstrations. We have seen the sacred recordings of your authority over the massive death creatures. Jake attempted a different approach, trying to show the aliens his diving equipment and explain how humans use technology to safely observe marine life. But when he demonstrated his underwater camera, the aliens became even more convinced of his divine nature. Sacred Jake controls not only the void swimmers, but also possesses mystical viewing devices. Keth 7 whispered to his companions. His powers extend beyond simple creature command. As the meeting continued, it became clear that every attempt to explain the truth only reinforced the aliens' beliefs. Their peaceful, herbivorous nature made it impossible for them to understand how beings could survive near predators without supernatural protection. Amy finally decided to take a different approach. If you truly believe we have these abilities, she said carefully, then perhaps we can work together to protect the creatures we both value. This suggestion delighted the Zephyrians beyond measure. They saw it as confirmation that the gods were benevolent and wanted to share their wisdom with lesser beings. Divine Amy speaks of protection rather than conquest, Vex 9 announced to his crew. These are truly gods of wisdom, not merely gods of war. The first contact session ended, with the aliens establishing a permanent embassy near Earth and declaring the solar system a sacred zone under divine protection. Luna, Jake, and Amy found themselves accidentally appointed as humanity's first interstellar ambassadors, with powers they didn't possess and responsibilities they never wanted. As they returned to Earth, all three realized that their simple desire to educate people about wildlife had somehow made them gods in the eyes of an entire alien civilization. The emergency council meeting on Zephyr Prime brought together the greatest minds of the Empire. Emperor Vel Prime sat at the center of the crystal chamber, his ancient form glowing with worry as the reports from Commander Vex 9 played on the main viewing sphere. Honored leaders, Vex 9 said through the transmission, we have discovered beings of incredible power. They appear to be gods who command armies of death creatures unlike anything in our known universe. The council watched in stunned silence as the human documentaries played. Dr. Keth 7 had organized the footage into what he believed were religious ceremonies, with each human demonstrating their divine control over different types of monsters. High Counselor Zara 12 was the first to speak. These creatures they command. Some appear to be void swimmers. Look at this transmission carefully. The screen showed marine biologist Jake Peterson in his diving gear, floating calmly in crystal blue water. Around him moved shapes that made Every Zephyrian in the council chamber trembled with fear. Great white sharks, some over 20 feet long, glided through the water like living missiles. The great white shark is one of the ocean's most perfect predators. Jake's voice came through his breathing equipment as he filmed underwater. They have remained virtually unchanged for 400 million years. Jake floated motionless as a massive female shark approached him. The creature was easily 3 times his size, with rows of razor-sharp teeth clearly visible in its open mouth. Yet Jake continued filming, even reaching out his hand as the shark passed within inches of his body. Notice how she investigates everything in her environment, Jake explained as the shark circled back for another look. Sharks use their entire sensory system to understand their world. To the Zephyrians, this was clear proof that Jake commanded these void swimmers through divine power. The fact that the shark did not immediately tear him apart could only mean it recognized his godlike status. When more sharks appeared, surrounding Jake completely, the aliens were certain they were witnessing a demonstration of military might. These void swimmers move through the water exactly like our ships move through space, Counselor Zara 12 observed. If these gods can command such creatures, they could send them against our fleets. Emperor Vel Prime studied the footage with growing concern. What else have we learned about these beings? Dr. Keth Seven's analysis appeared on secondary screens throughout the chamber. We have identified at least 12 different war gods, each commanding different types of death creatures. The one called Jake appears to control the void swimmers. The female Luna commands the massive land killers. But there is another who may be the most dangerous of all. The screen shifted to show Dr. Amy Foster standing beside a Land Rover in the African savanna. In the distance, a pride of lions rested in the shade of acacia trees. The massive male lion, with his golden mane flowing in the wind, looked like something from Zephyrian nightmares. The African lion is known as the king of beasts, Amy explained, as she set up her camera equipment just 50 meters from the pride. These magnificent predators work together as a family unit to survive in one of the world's harshest environments. Amy moved even closer to the lions, speaking in the same calm tone that all the human gods seemed to use. When the male lion stood up and stretched, showing muscles that could clearly tear apart armored vehicles, Amy actually smiled and continued filming. "Watch how the pride communicates," Amy said as the lions began to groom each other and play with cubs. Each member has a role in the family structure. The Zephyrians were horrified to see what appeared to be an entire army of golden-maned destroyers following Amy's commands. When she moved, the lions seemed to move in response. When she spoke, they listened. When one of the cubs approached, her vehicle Amy showed no fear whatsoever. "She has domesticated them," Emperor Vel Prime whispered. "This Amy has turned the most deadly land predators into her personal guard animals." The footage continued as Amy followed the lions on a hunt. The Zephyrians watched in terror as the pride worked together to bring down a massive buffalo. The HFY coordination, the speed, the efficiency of the kill convinced them that these were not just predators, but trained soldiers following divine commands. If each of these gods commands different armies, Counselor Zara 12 said, then their combined military might could conquer our entire sector of the galaxy. Dr. Keth 7 added more analysis to his report. "We have observed them commanding creatures that fly, swim, run, and even some that appear to be living poison dispensers. One god controls serpents that can kill with a single bite. Another commands flying predators that hunt in coordinated flocks. The council reviewed footage of various nature documentaries, each one more terrifying than the last. They saw humans standing calmly among creatures that could destroy cities, explaining their behavior as if discussing simple pets. The fact that these gods never showed fear, never ran away, never even raised their voices, proved their divine nature. "We must assume they are aware of our presence," Emperor Velprime declared. "Beings of such power surely have methods of detecting our ships." This assumption was completely wrong. Jake Peterson was currently reviewing underwater footage in his research station off the coast of South Africa, completely unaware that aliens existed. Amy Foster was writing grant proposals to fund her next lion study, focused entirely on conservation efforts. Luna Bright was teaching a wildlife biology class at Colorado State University, showing students how to safely observe animals in the wild. None of them knew that their educational documentaries had triggered the largest military preparation in Zephyrian history. "We must prepare tribute," the Emperor announced. "If these war gods decide to expand their territory, we need to show them that we pose no threat to their divine realm." The council began immediate preparations for what they believed would be first contact with gods of war. They gathered the most precious metals from their mining worlds, created artworks showing their peaceful nature, and composed religious hymns to honor the new deities they had discovered. Meanwhile, more transmissions continued to arrive from Earth. Each new documentary added to the aliens' terror and awe. They saw humans explaining the hunting methods of tigers, the pack behavior of wolves, the diving abilities of orcas, and the territorial nature of bears. Every single transmission showed humans demonstrating complete mastery over creatures that could exterminate entire Zephyrian colonies. "The pattern is clear," Dr. Keth Seven reported to the council. "These gods create documentaries to teach their followers about their divine armies. Each transmission is a lesson in the capabilities of their war creatures." The Zephyrians began intercepting more signals from Earth, including news broadcasts and entertainment programs. But they interpreted everything through the lens of their initial misunderstanding. When they saw humans riding horses, they believed these were tamed land creatures used for quick transportation between battles. When they observed humans with dogs, they assumed these were smaller predators kept as personal guardians. Emperor Velprime made his final decision. "We will approach their world with the greatest tribute fleet ever assembled. We must show these gods that we honor their power and seek only peaceful coexistence." As the Zephyrian Empire began preparing for what they believed would be contact with divine beings, the humans of Earth continued their normal lives. Wildlife documentarians around the world kept filming, editing, and broadcasting their work, never suspecting that each transmission was being analyzed by aliens as evidence of humanity's godlike powers. The stage was set for a first contact situation unlike anything either species could have imagined. Commander Vex 9 floated in his command chair aboard the exploration vessel Gentle Current, his crystalline body catching the soft blue light of the ship's systems. The Zephyrian had been scanning deep space for new worlds when his communications officer Keth 7 made a discovery that would change everything they knew about the universe. "Commander," Keth 7 said, his voice carrying the musical tones of their species, "we are receiving strange transmissions from a distant star system. The signals appear to be some form of religious broadcast." Vex 9 moved to the communications station with the graceful gliding motion typical of his people. The Zephyrians had evolved from peaceful plant-eating creatures on their homeworld, and violence was something they found deeply disturbing. Their entire civilization was built on harmony, meditation, and the careful study of growing things. "Show me these transmissions," Vex 9 said. The main screen filled with an image that made every Zephyrian on the bridge freeze in terror. A massive brown creature with enormous claws and teeth was catching fish from a rushing river. The beast was clearly one of the most dangerous predators they had ever seen. But what shocked them even more was the calm voice speaking over the images. "The grizzly bear is one of North America's most powerful predators," said Dr. Luna Bright, though the aliens did not know her name yet. "These magnificent animals can weigh up to 800 pounds and run faster than a horse." Luna stood on a small hill overlooking the river, no more than 50 yards from the massive bear. She spoke with complete calm as the creature tore apart, salmon with its claws. Her voice never showed fear or worry, as if she was discussing the weather. "Look at how this female protects her cubs," Luna continued, as the bear chased away a much larger male. "Mother bears will fight to the death to keep their young safe." The Zephyrians watched in complete shock. On their world, the largest predator was about the size of a small earth rabbit, and even those tiny creatures were feared and avoided. The idea of standing so close to such a massive killer was beyond their understanding. "This cannot be real," whispered Keth 7. "No being could survive so close to such a death beast." But Vex 9 was thinking differently. In Zephyrian culture, only their most holy leaders could calm wild animals through divine power. If this strange being could stand so close to such a monster without fear, she must possess incredible spiritual strength. "Run the transmission again," Vex 9 ordered. They watched as Luna explained bear behavior, pointing toward the animal as it caught fish after fish. She never moved away, never showed fear, never even raised her voice when the bear looked directly at her. To the Zephyrians, this could only mean one thing. She was controlling the beast through divine will. "Note how the bear ignores her completely," Vex 9 said to his crew. "This being has such power that the death creature does not even see her as prey. She commands it through spiritual force." The next part of the transmission showed Luna walking along a forest path while discussing bear territory. In the background, they could see clear signs that bears lived in the area. Claw marks on trees, disturbed ground, and what Luna called bear trails. "These paths are used by multiple bears throughout the season," Luna explained. "Each bear knows the territory of others through scent marking and careful communication." To the Zephyrians, this sounded like Luna was describing her followers. The bears were clearly her servants, marking territory according to her divine commands. The fact that she could walk freely through their domain proved her godlike status. Keth 7 began recording everything, his scientific mind trying to understand what they were witnessing. "Commander, if this being truly commands such creatures, what does that say about her entire species?" Before Vex 9 could answer, another transmission began. This one showed a different human, a man called Steve Martinez, standing near a muddy, riverbank in what appeared to be a much warmer climate. The water beside him suddenly exploded as something massive broke the surface. "The Nile crocodile is Africa's largest freshwater predator," Steve said calmly as a creature the size of a small spacecraft pulled itself onto the bank. "These ancient hunters have remained unchanged for millions of years." The crocodile's jaws could clearly crush metal, and its armored hide looked like it could stop energy weapons. Yet Steve stood just meters away, describing its hunting methods as more of the creatures appeared in the water behind him. "During the dry season, dozens of crocodiles gather in the remaining pools," Steve continued, as the camera showed at least 20 of the massive predators floating nearby. They wait patiently for prey to come to drink. The Zephyrians could barely process what they were seeing. This human male was surrounded by an army of what could only be described as living weapons, yet he spoke as if discussing garden plants. When one of the crocodiles opened its massive jaws, showing teeth like daggers, Steve actually moved closer to get a better view. "This is impossible," Keth 7 whispered. "No being could control so many death creatures at once." But Vex 9 was beginning to understand. "Unless they are not just controlling them," he said slowly. "What if these beings created these creatures? What if they are gods of war, and these monsters are their divine soldiers?" The idea sent shockwaves through the bridge crew. In Zephyrian mythology, only the most powerful war gods could create and command armies of deadly beasts. If these humans possessed such abilities, they represented power beyond anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. More transmissions continued to arrive, each one more terrifying than the last. They saw humans calmly discussing creatures that could tear apart starships, poison entire armies, or hunt in coordinated packs. In every case, the humans showed no fear, often standing close enough to touch these nightmare beings. "We must inform the Empire immediately," Vex 9 declared. "We have discovered a race of war gods who command the most deadly creatures in the universe." As Keth 7 prepared the urgent message to their homeworld, neither Zephyrian realized they had completely misunderstood what they were watching. Dr. Luna Bright was back in her laboratory in Colorado, editing footage for her next documentary about wolves. Steve Martinez was in his hotel room in Kenya, writing notes for tomorrow's filming session. Neither had any idea that their wildlife documentaries had just convinced an entire alien species that humans were divine beings who ruled over armies of death creatures. The message traveled through space toward the Zephyrian Empire, carrying, with it, the first reports of humanity's supposed godlike powers. Soon, the peaceful herbivore species would face a terrible choice: worship these terrifying new gods, or risk facing their armies of predators in battle. None of them could imagine that the gods were simply people who loved animals and wanted to teach others about wildlife conservation.